I'm Brooke Evans, 29, and I inherited my grandfather's lakeside cabin 6 months ago. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, my escape from a hectic marketing career in the city. That Friday, all I wanted was a peaceful weekend alone. Instead, as I rounded the final curve of the Pineline driveway, my heart stopped. There sat a moving truck, boxes scattered across the lawn, and through the window, I could see a pregnant woman hanging nursery decorations in MY house. Before I continue this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me through this wild family drama. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. My grandfather George was the most important person in my life growing up. When my parents divorced when I was 7, Grandpa George became my rock. Every summer from age 8 until I graduated college, I spent 3 weeks at his lakeside cabin in northern Michigan. Those were the memories that shaped me. The cabin itself wasn't anything fancy, a 2-bedroom log structure with a stone fireplace, wraparound porch, and private dock on Crystal Lake. But what made it special was how Grandpa George taught me everything there. How to bait a hook and clean a fish. How to identify bird calls at dawn. How to paddle a canoe against the current. How to build a fire that would last through the night. This place has spirit, Brookie, he'd tell me, using my childhood nickname. Not the kind from ghost stories. The kind that builds character. The kind that stays with you. We'd sit on the dock during sunset, our feet dangling in the cool water, eating homemade ice cream and talking about life. As I grew older, those conversations evolved from simple stories to meaningful discussions about my dreams, fears, and aspirations. When I struggled with anxiety in high school, it was at the cabin where I learned meditation from Grandpa. When I doubted my career choices in college, it was on that dock where he helped me map out my future. The cabin represented more than property. It represented unconditional love and wisdom. When Grandpa George was diagnosed with congestive heart failure 3 years ago, the family rallied around him. My sister Amanda visited regularly with her husband Jason. My parents, though divorced, both made time to help with doctor appointments. But it was me who moved temporarily into his main residence in Ann Arbor to provide daily care during his final year. During that time, Jason started dropping hints about the cabin. "George sure loves that old place," he'd say casually. "Amanda and I have always dreamed of raising kids in a spot like that. Away from the city, you know." I never responded to these comments. My focus was on making Grandpa comfortable, not on inheritance talk. 2 months before he passed, Grandpa George updated his will with his attorney, Patricia. He gathered the family in his living room afterward. "I've made my decisions with clear mind and heart," he announced, his voice weaker but his blue eyes still sharp. "The Ann Arbor house will be sold, and proceeds divided equally among all of you. My investments will be split the same way." Then he looked directly at me. "Brooke, the cabin goes to you. You've always understood what makes that place special. I know you'll honor its spirit." The room fell silent. I remember feeling overwhelmed with emotion, gratitude mixed with the painful reminder that soon he'd be gone. Amanda hugged me afterward, whispering, "He made the right choice. You love that place more than any of us." But Jason's reaction was different. His congratulations felt hollow, his smile forced. In the kitchen later, I overheard him telling Amanda it should have been ours. "We're the ones planning a family. What does Brooke need a whole cabin for? She's single." Amanda defended me. "It's not about need, Jason. It's about connection. Brooke and Grandpa shared something special there." "Still," he insisted, "family property should benefit the whole family." Over the next months, as Grandpa's health declined further, Jason became increasingly vocal about shared family usage of the cabin. He'd corner me with comments like, "Once it's yours, we should set up a schedule. 2 weeks for you, 2 weeks for us. That's fair, right?" I would respond vaguely, not wanting to create conflict while Grandpa was still with us. "Let's talk about arrangements later." After Grandpa passed and the will was officially executed, I became the legal owner of the cabin. At the small gathering following the funeral, Jason approached me again. "So, about summer scheduling for the cabin." This time, I was direct. "Jason, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not ready to establish sharing arrangements yet. I need time. But Amanda and I were hoping to take the kids there this summer, he pressed. Amanda and Jason had no children yet, though they'd been talking about starting a family for years. I understand, but the cabin is my private property now. When I'm ready to have guests, you'll be among the first I invite. His face hardened. That's pretty selfish, don't you think? Hoarding a family resource? Amanda pulled him away before I could respond, but the interaction left me unsettled. It became clear that Jason never truly accepted that the cabin belonged solely to me. Monday morning meetings at Burton Marketing were always brutal. As senior account manager, I was responsible for presenting weekend performance metrics to our high-profile clients. That particular Monday, our biggest client, Nature Life Supplements, was threatening to pull their seven-figure account due to underperforming ad campaigns. We need to completely overhaul the strategy by Friday, my boss Derek insisted. Brooke, I need you to take point on this. Whatever it takes. That meant 14-hour workdays ahead. By Wednesday, my stress levels had reached critical mass. That evening, my phone rang. It was Amanda. Hey sis, she said, her voice unusually subdued. Got a minute to talk? I balanced my phone between ear and shoulder while continuing to type. For you, always. What's up? Jason and I separated 3 weeks ago, she said. I'm staying at mom's for now. My fingers froze over the keyboard. What? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Amanda sighed. It's complicated and embarrassing. Jason's been seeing someone else. A woman named Hazel from his office. I'm so sorry, Amanda, I said, truly shocked. Jason and Amanda had been together since college, almost 10 years. There's more, Amanda continued. Hazel is pregnant. About 7 months along. He's been seeing her for almost a year. I was speechless. The timeline meant he'd been cheating on my sister while we were caring for our dying grandfather. The kicker is how suddenly he's all about settling down and building a family with her when he always told me he wasn't ready for kids, Amanda said bitterly. Now he's desperate to create this perfect family image. He even bought a crib last week. After comforting Amanda, I promised to visit her over the weekend. We hung up, and I tried to refocus on work, but my mind kept drifting to Jason's betrayal. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unsaved number. Brooke, it's Jason. Need a favor. Can I use the cabin this weekend? Just for a couple days. I stared at the message in disbelief. After what Amanda had just told me, he had the audacity to ask for favors. I typed back. No, Jason. That won't work for me. His response came quickly. Come on, I'm in a tight spot. Moving out of the house and need temporary space. It's just sitting empty anyway. I said no. Please respect that. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. I thought family helped family. Guess I was wrong about you. I didn't respond. The next morning, another text arrived. You're being unreasonable. Amanda and I are just going through a rough patch. I need somewhere quiet to think. I showed the messages to Lauren, my best friend since college, over lunch. The nerve of this guy, Lauren said, shaking her head. He's manipulating you with that family helps family garbage. Classic guilt tripping. I know, I agreed. And he didn't even mention that he's left my sister for a pregnant girlfriend. You need to be crystal clear with him, Lauren advised. No ambiguity he can exploit. That evening, I sent Jason a final message. To be absolutely clear, you do not have permission to use my cabin. Not this weekend, not any weekend. Do not go there. Do not ask again. He replied with a single thumbs down emoji. By Friday, I'd pulled 4 consecutive 16-hour workdays. The Nature Life campaign had been completely restructured, but at significant personal cost. My eyes burned from screen fatigue, my shoulders ached from tension, and my mind felt foggy from exhaustion. You need a break, Derek said after our final client call. Take Monday off. You've earned it. That's when I decided to drive up to the cabin myself. A long weekend of lake air, silence, and solitude was exactly what I needed. I texted Amanda to reschedule our visit, packed a small bag, and hit the road by 3 p.m. During the 3-hour drive north, I felt the tension beginning to melt away. Windows down, music up, the scent of pine forests growing stronger as I left the city behind. I stopped for groceries in the last town before the cabin, picking up simple comfort foods, ingredients for pancakes, fresh berries, good coffee, and a bottle of wine. As I made the final turn onto the private road leading to the cabin, I was already planning my evening, a glass of wine on the dock, watching the sunset just like Grandpa and I used to do. That's when I saw it. A large moving truck parked in my driveway. The moving truck was angled awkwardly across the gravel driveway, its rear doors open wide like a gaping mouth. Cardboard boxes were stacked on the porch, some already spilling their contents. Kitchen appliances, bedding, framed photos. A blue sedan with a baby on board sticker was parked beside the truck. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This couldn't be happening. Not after I'd explicitly forbidden it. I parked behind the moving truck, blocking it in, and sat for a moment gathering my composure. Part of me wanted to call the police immediately. Another part needed to confirm my suspicions before escalating. As I stepped out of my car, I noticed more details. Men's clothing draped over the porch railing. A half-assembled crib leaning against the exterior wall. A dog bowl filled with water, though I couldn't see any dog. I walked around the perimeter of the cabin, looking through windows. The main living area was in disarray, with more boxes and unfamiliar furniture. My grandfather's antique fishing rods, which had always hung reverently on the living room wall, were propped carelessly in a corner. Through the bedroom window, I saw a woman with auburn hair struggling to hang a mobile of woodland creatures over what used to be my reading nook. The space had been transformed with pale yellow paint, woodland creature decals, and a changing table. They were setting up a nursery. In my cabin. Without permission. My hands trembled as I returned to the front door. Using my key, I unlocked it and stepped inside. "Hello," I called out, my voice steadier than I felt. A startled gasp came from the bedroom, followed by the appearance of a very pregnant woman in the hallway. She had kind eyes and looked to be in her early 30s, with her hand protectively cradling her rounded belly. "Oh," she exclaimed. "You must be Amanda. Jason said you might drop by to help." "I'm Hazel." The assumption knocked me off balance. "I'm not Amanda," I said slowly. "I'm Brooke Evans. This is my cabin." Confusion spread across Hazel's face. "Brooke? Jason's sister-in-law?" "But Jason said." She trailed off, her expression shifting to uncertainty. "What exactly did Jason tell you about this place?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice level. "That it's your family cabin that you're letting us use while we look for a house," Hazel explained. "He said you were incredibly generous to offer it, especially with the baby coming so soon." She gestured to her belly. "We're due in 6 weeks." My blood ran cold. "Hazel, I never offered the cabin to Jason. In fact, I explicitly told him he could not use it. This property belongs solely to me. I inherited it from my grandfather." Hazel's face paled. "But we're moving in. Jason said we could stay as long as needed. He's already given notice on his apartment." Her voice rose with alarm. "He said you were happy to help us during this transition." "None of that is true," I said firmly. "Jason doesn't have permission to be here, let alone move in." The sound of tires on gravel interrupted us. Through the window, I saw Jason's black truck pulling up beside my car. He emerged carrying takeout bags, whistling casually as if this were his home. The door opened, and Jason froze mid-step when he saw me. "Brooke," he said, recovering quickly and forcing a smile. "What a surprise. Didn't expect you until tomorrow." "I never said I was coming tomorrow. I told you not to come here at all," I replied, my voice dangerously quiet. "What exactly do you think you're doing, Jason?" He set the food down and spread his hands in a placating gesture. "Now let's not make a scene in front of Hazel. She's in a delicate condition." "Answer the question," I insisted. "Why are you moving into my cabin after I explicitly told you no?" Jason's expression hardened. "Look, you're being unreasonable about this whole thing. You have this huge cabin that sits empty most of the time. We need a place to stay. It's a perfect solution." "A perfect solution would be respecting my property and my boundaries," I shot back. "It's family property," Jason argued, his voice rising. Your grandfather would have wanted it to help family in need. Don't you dare invoke my grandfather, I warned. This cabin was left specifically to me, not to the family collectively. You have no rights here. Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice. Be reasonable, Brooke. Hazel is 7 months pregnant. We need stability. We've already started moving in. You can't just throw a pregnant woman out. I glanced at Hazel, who looked increasingly distressed, then back at Jason. You put her in this position, not me. You lied to her about having permission to be here. We're not leaving, Jason said flatly. I've already set up mail forwarding and utilities in my name. The movers are coming back tomorrow with the rest of our stuff. This is illegal, I pointed out. It's trespassing and attempted theft of property. Jason laughed coldly. Go ahead, call the cops on a pregnant woman. See how that plays with the family. With the locals. You'll be the villain here, not me. The manipulation was so blatant it took my breath away. He had orchestrated this entire situation, counting on social pressure and my own sense of decency to force my compliance. You have until morning to pack what you've brought and leave, I stated firmly. Both of you. Or what? Jason challenged, stepping even closer, using his height to intimidate me. This is happening, Brooke. The sooner you accept it, the easier it'll be for everyone. We're moving in. We're setting up the nursery. This is our home now. In that moment, I saw Jason clearly for perhaps the first time, not as my brother-in-law, but as someone willing to bully and manipulate to get what he wanted. Someone who had cheated on my sister while our grandfather was dying, who had lied to his pregnant girlfriend, and who now thought he could simply take my property through sheer force of will. This will never be your home, I said quietly. Never. A tense silence filled the cabin. Hazel had retreated to the bedroom, and I could hear her soft crying through the thin walls. Part of me felt terrible for her. She was clearly a victim of Jason's lies too. But the larger part of me was incandescent with rage. Jason had made himself comfortable on my grandfather's recliner, pointedly ignoring me while scrolling through his phone. The casual way he claimed the space made my blood boil. You need to talk to Hazel, I said. She deserves to know the truth about this situation. I'll handle Hazel, Jason replied without looking up. She's emotional because of the pregnancy hormones. Best to let her calm down. I walked to the kitchen to get water and collect my thoughts. On the counter sat moving documents with Jason's new address listed as the cabin's. He'd been planning this for weeks, methodically laying groundwork for a permanent move. When I returned to the living room, Jason had disappeared outside. Through the window, I watched him making phone calls, gesturing animatedly. Preparing his next move, no doubt. I knocked gently on the bedroom door. Hazel? Can we talk? The door opened to reveal Hazel sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes red-rimmed. I'm so confused, she said. Jason promised me we had permission to be here. I sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. I'm sorry you've been put in this position. But I need you to understand. Jason never asked if you could live here, and when he asked to visit, I explicitly said no. Hazel wiped her eyes. He told me you were thrilled to help us, especially with the baby coming. That you'd said we could stay until we found the perfect house, even if it took a year. My jaw tightened. None of that is true. This cabin is my private property. It's not family property, and it's certainly not Jason's to offer. Where are we supposed to go? Hazel asked, protective hands on her belly. Jason gave up his apartment. My lease ended last month when I moved in with him temporarily. We have nowhere else. The weight of her predicament wasn't lost on me, but neither was Jason's manipulative strategy. He'd created this crisis intentionally. Before I could respond, the front door slammed. Jason stormed into the bedroom, face flushed with anger. What did you do to the locks? He demanded. What are you talking about? I haven't touched any locks, I replied, genuinely confused. The shed. I can't get in. Did you change the locks? I stood up. The shed has always had a separate key. One that you don't have, because this isn't your property. I need to get in there. We're storing our extra boxes there. No, you're not, I stated firmly. You're not storing anything anywhere on this property because you are not staying. Jason stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Listen carefully. I just spoke with the neighbors. Told them all about how we're moving in to help take care of the family property while you're busy in the city. They're thrilled to have year-round residents here. Everyone thinks it's a wonderful arrangement. The calculated nature of his actions stunned me. You're trying to establish some kind of false community consensus. I also mentioned how emotional you've been since your grandfather died. How sometimes you get confused about arrangements we've made. His smile was cold. If there's any trouble, they'll know who to believe. The implied threat was clear. If I escalated, he would paint me as unstable and himself as the reasonable party. Get out of my house, I said, my voice shaking. Make me, Jason replied. Better yet, call the cops. I'll show them the mail I've had forwarded here. The utilities I've switched to my name. I'll tell them about our verbal agreement that you're now trying to back out of. I'll have poor pregnant Hazel crying about how you're trying to make her homeless. Hazel looked up, shocked. Jason, what are you saying? He ignored her. Face it, Brooke. The smart play is to accept the situation. We're staying for at least a year. Maybe longer if we like it here. Something inside me snapped. This is my grandfather's legacy to me, not yours. I will not be bullied or manipulated out of what's rightfully mine. Jason's expression darkened. Then things will get very unpleasant for everyone. I grabbed my purse and car keys. I need some air. Outside, I sat in my car, hands trembling too badly to insert the key. Tears of frustration streamed down my face. How had this happened? How had a simple weekend getaway turned into this nightmare? I called Lauren. He's done what? She exclaimed after I explained the situation. That's not just boundary crossing, Brooke. That's criminal. He's thought of everything, I said. He's manipulated the situation, so I look like the villain if I stand my ground. Document everything, Lauren advised. Take photos of them there without permission. Record conversations if you legally can in your state. Call a lawyer first thing tomorrow. What about tonight? I can't stay here with him, but I can't leave them alone in the cabin either. Is there a hotel nearby where you can collect yourself and make a plan? There was, a small and about 20 minutes away. Yes, but it feels like surrendering. It's not surrendering, Lauren assured me. It's strategically retreating to prepare a proper response. Don't engage with him while you're emotional. That's what he wants. After hanging up, I started the car but didn't immediately drive away. Instead, I began taking photos of the moving truck, the boxes, the change locks. Evidence. As I finished, Jason emerged from the cabin. Running away? He taunted. Typical. When things get tough, you've always retreated. I ignored him and began recording video on my phone, keeping it partially concealed. For the record, I said clearly, you do not have permission to be on this property. You do not have permission to change locks, forward mail, or establish residency here. You are trespassing, and I am formally asking you to leave. Jason's demeanor changed instantly when he realized I was creating evidence. Turn that off, he snapped, reaching for my phone. I stepped back quickly. Touch me or my property, and it becomes assault. His face contorted with rage. You think you're so clever. You've always been the golden child. Perfect Brooke who could do no wrong. Who gets everything handed to her. The outburst revealed the depth of resentment I hadn't fully appreciated before. This wasn't just about the cabin. It was about years of perceived injustice in Jason's mind. This isn't about me, I said calmly, still recording. This is about your choices. You chose to lie to Hazel about having permission to be here. At that moment, Hazel appeared on the porch, having overheard our conversation. You told me Brooke had offered us the cabin, she said to Jason, her voice quavering. You said it was all arranged. Jason spun around. Get back inside, Hazel. This doesn't concern you. It absolutely concerns me. Hazel cried. You've put our baby's future at risk with these lies. Where are we supposed to go if we can't stay here? We are staying here, Jason insisted. Brooke is the one being unreasonable. By not letting you steal my property? I interjected. Hazel descended the porch steps with difficulty, one hand supporting her back. I can't be part of this, Jason. You promised me stability. You promised me honesty after everything with Amanda. This isn't right. Jason's face reddened. Don't you dare side with her. After everything I've done for you and the baby. What you've done is lie to me, Hazel said, tears streaming down her face. Again. She turned to me. I'm so sorry, Brooke. I had no idea. I would never have agreed to this if I'd known the truth. Suddenly, Hazel gasped and clutched her belly, doubling over slightly. Hazel! I rushed forward, supporting her arm. Are you okay? Just a sharp pain, she winced. I've been having them on and off all day. Alarm bells rang in my head. How far apart are these pains? I don't know. Maybe 20 minutes? It's probably just Braxton Hicks contractions. The doctor said those are normal. We should get you checked out anyway, I said firmly. 7 months is too early for real labor. Jason stood frozen, seemingly paralyzed by the medical situation and the collapse of his plans. I'll take her to the hospital, I decided, glaring at Jason. You can stay here and start packing up your things. When we get back, I expect to see progress on that front. As I helped Hazel to my car, leaving Jason standing impotently in the driveway, I realized we had reached the breaking point. There was no going back from here. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes away in Carson City. As I drove, Hazel called her obstetrician, who advised her to get checked as a precaution, but reassured her that stress-induced Braxton Hicks contractions were common. I'm so embarrassed, Hazel said after hanging up. I had no idea Jason was lying about the cabin. It's not your fault, I said, keeping my eyes on the winding country road. Jason is manipulative. He lied to both of us. Hazel stared out the window. He's been doing that a lot lately. Telling me one thing, then I find out later it wasn't true. Like what? I asked, genuinely curious about the man who had been married to my sister for nearly a decade. He told me he and Amanda were separated for 6 months before we got involved. I later found out it had been barely 2 weeks, Hazel confessed. He said he'd told her about us, but she called me one day at work, completely shocked. The pieces were falling into place. When did you find out you were pregnant? Around Christmas. I wanted to end things when I realized how much he'd lied, but then. She placed a protective hand on her belly. I couldn't go through with an abortion. It just wasn't right for me. And Jason. Hazel laughed bitterly. Suddenly he was all in. Baby names, nursery plans, talking about marriage. It was a complete turnaround from the man who told me he wasn't sure he ever wanted kids when we first met. We lapsed into silence until reaching the Carson City Memorial Hospital. The emergency room was mercifully quiet, and Hazel was taken to an examination room while I waited outside. I used the time to call Amanda. Jason did what? She exclaimed when I explained the situation. He moved into the cabin without permission and is refusing to leave, I repeated. I'm at the hospital with Hazel now. Is she okay? I think so. Just stress-induced contractions. Amanda sighed heavily. I'm so sorry, Brooke. This is partly my fault. I should have warned you he might try something like this. He's been acting increasingly erratic since I asked for the separation. This goes beyond erratic, I pointed out. This is calculated and manipulative. That's Jason, Amanda said sadly. Under pressure, he stops seeing people as people. They become obstacles or tools. It's why I finally left. I realized I'd never really be a person to him, just a means to his ends. Her insight struck me profoundly. I never saw that side of him before. He hides it well. Until he doesn't. After hanging up, I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. The dispatcher connected me with Sheriff Sullivan, who listened patiently to my situation. Unfortunately, Ms. Evans, this falls into a gray area, he explained. If he's established any kind of residency claim, even a fraudulent one, it becomes a civil matter requiring formal eviction. But he just arrived today, I protested. And I have proof I denied permission. That helps, Sullivan said. In that case, we can treat it as trespassing. I can send a deputy out to accompany you back to the property and ensure he leaves peacefully. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. We're at the hospital now, but should be back within a couple of hours. I'll have Deputy Rodriguez meet you there at 6. And Ms. Evans? Document everything. Take photos, videos, keep all text messages. If this escalates to court, you'll want that evidence. Hazel emerged from the examination room, looking tired but relieved. False alarm, she confirmed. The doctor said it's just stress and dehydration. But I need to rest and avoid tension for the next few days. I nodded, already formulating a plan. I'm going to get you a hotel room for tonight. Then tomorrow we can figure out next steps for you. I can't afford a hotel, Hazel said worriedly. I've been on unpaid leave from work for 3 weeks because of back pain. I've got it covered, I assured her. This isn't your mess to fix. On the drive back, I explained my conversation with the sheriff. Hazel agreed to go directly to the hotel while I returned to the cabin with the deputy. The Holiday Inn Express in town had a vacancy, and I paid for 3 nights up front, giving Hazel my cell number and promising to check on her the next day. Thank you, she said earnestly as I turned to leave. You have every right to hate me, but instead you're helping me. I don't hate you, Hazel. You're as much a victim of Jason's manipulation as anyone. When Deputy Rodriguez and I pulled up to the cabin at 6, the scene that greeted us was worse than I'd imagined. The front door stood wide open. Inside, furniture had been overturned, and several of my grandfather's framed photos lay shattered on the floor. Looks like someone had a tantrum, Rodriguez observed, hand moving instinctively to rest on his holstered weapon. We found Jason in the backyard, burning papers in the fire pit. When he saw the deputy, his expression flickered between defiance and fear. Jason Taylor? Rodriguez called. I'm Deputy Rodriguez with the County Sheriff's Department. We've received a complaint of trespassing on private property. Jason straightened, adopting an injured expression. There must be some misunderstanding, officer. This is family property. I'm well within my rights to be here. I stepped forward, clutching a folder. I have the deed and my grandfather's will right here. The property belongs solely to me, Brooke Evans. Mr. Taylor has no ownership rights whatsoever. Rodriguez reviewed the documents carefully. These appear in order, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Evans has legal right to determine who can and cannot be on this property. We had a verbal agreement, Jason insisted, shooting me a venomous look. I have text messages proving otherwise, I countered, showing the deputy our exchange, where I explicitly denied permission. Rodriguez turned to Jason. Sir, at this point, you have 2 options. You can leave voluntarily with your belongings, or you can be arrested for criminal trespassing. Ms. Evans has made it clear you do not have permission to be here. Jason's face contorted with rage. This is ridiculous. I have rights. Not to this property, you don't, Rodriguez stated flatly. Now, what's it going to be? For a tense moment, I thought Jason might refuse. Then, shoulders slumping, he muttered, Fine. I'll get my stuff. I'll need to supervise that process, Rodriguez informed him. Standard procedure. It took 2 hours for Jason to pack his and Hazel's belongings into his truck and the moving van. With each box, his resentment seemed to grow. As he prepared to leave, he fixed me with a cold stare. This isn't over, Brooke. The family will hear about how you treated a pregnant woman. I'll sue for my rightful share of this property. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Rodriguez stepped between us. That's enough, Mr. Taylor. Any harassment or threats will result in additional charges. Jason snorted derisively but said nothing more. He climbed into his truck while Rodriguez ensured the moving van driver had alternate delivery instructions. As the vehicles disappeared down the driveway, relief washed over me like a physical wave. Rodriguez handed me his card. Call immediately if he returns. And I strongly suggest changing your locks tonight. I can recommend a local emergency locksmith. After he left, I stood in the middle of the ransacked cabin surveying the damage. It wasn't just the overturned furniture or broken glass that hurt, it was the violation of my sanctuary. The space that had always represented safety and peace now felt tainted. But as I began picking up the pieces of my grandfather's shattered photo frames, carefully preserving the images inside, I made a silent promise. I would reclaim this space. I would not let Jason's actions destroy what this cabin meant to me. I called the locksmith Rodriguez had recommended, who arrived within the hour and replaced all external locks. That night, I slept fitfully on the couch, jumping at every sound from the woods outside, wondering if Jason would make good on his implied threats. The morning after Jason's departure, I woke to a gentle knocking at the front door. Disoriented and wary, I peered through the peephole to find Amanda standing on the porch, holding 2 coffee cups and a bag from the local bakery. "Reinforcements have arrived," she announced when I opened the door. "I drove up first thing when you texted about the locks being changed." The simple gesture of solidarity brought tears to my eyes. We hugged tightly before surveying the remaining disarray inside. "Jason always was a sore loser," Amanda remarked, taking in the damage. "But this is a new low even for him." We spent the morning cleaning, restoring order to the chaos Jason had left behind. Amanda told me more about their marriage's deterioration over the past year. "He became obsessed with appearances," she explained as we washed broken glass from picture frames. "The right house, the right car, the right connections." When I couldn't get pregnant after trying for 2 years, he started blaming me. Said I was denying him the complete package he deserved. "That's horrible," I said, pausing my sweeping. "You never told me." Amanda shrugged. "It was humiliating." Then I found texts between him and Hazel on his phone. "The things he said about me." She trailed off, blinking back tears. "You deserved better," I told her firmly. "So did Hazel," Amanda replied, surprising me. "She's young and impressionable. Jason has a way of making you believe you're special until you're not useful anymore." By afternoon, we'd restored most of the cabin to order, though emotional wounds still felt raw. I called Hazel to check on her, relieved to hear she was resting comfortably at the hotel. "I've been thinking," I told her. "I know some people at Sierra Women's Resource Center in Carson City. They have transitional housing for women in difficult situations. Would you like me to make a call?" Hazel's voice brightened. "Really? That would be amazing." I was panicking about what to do next. I made the connection, and by evening, Hazel had an intake appointment scheduled for Monday. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it would provide safety and stability while she figured out her next steps. That evening, Amanda and I sat on the dock, feet dangling in the cool water just as Grandpa George and I used to do. The sunset painted the lake in shades of orange and pink, a beautiful contrast to the day's ugliness. "Do you think Jason will really try to cause more trouble?" Amanda asked. I sighed. "Probably. He's wounded and vengeful. But I've spoken with a lawyer and my ownership is ironclad. The best he could do is try to poison family relationships." "Mom and Dad are already on your side," Amanda assured me. I filled them in. They're horrified by what he did. The next day brought an unexpected discovery. While cleaning the bedroom that Jason and Hazel had briefly occupied, I found a stack of overdue bills hidden in a dresser drawer. Credit card statements showing maxed-out accounts. A foreclosure notice on a rental property I hadn't known Jason owned. A demand letter from a payday loan company. "He's broke," I realized, showing Amanda. That's why he was so desperate for the cabin. "He's drowning in debt." Amanda examined the papers. "This explains so much. The sudden interest in family property and free housing. The pressure to let him move in." I felt a wave of clarity. He wasn't just being entitled. He was financially desperate. This revelation didn't excuse Jason's behavior, but it helped explain the intensity of his reaction. He hadn't just wanted the cabin, he had needed it as a financial lifeline. Over the next few days, we established a new rhythm at the cabin. Amanda decided to stay for the week, working remotely while I did the same. We took breaks to swim in the lake, hike the surrounding trails, and reconnect as sisters. I also visited Hazel at the Women's Center, bringing her remaining belongings and helping her navigate resources for single mothers. Despite the circumstances, we developed a tentative friendship. "Jason keeps calling," she confided during one visit, alternating between apologies and accusations. "The counselor here says that's typical manipulative behavior." "Are you talking to him?" I asked. Hazel shook her head. "I'm focusing on making a stable plan for this baby. I can't have that kind of chaos in our lives." Her strength impressed me. In the midst of pregnancy, homelessness, and heartbreak, she was making difficult but healthy choices. 10 days after the confrontation, I received a certified letter from an attorney representing Jason, claiming he had established tenancy at the cabin and demanding fair compensation for his illegal eviction. My own lawyer responded with our documented evidence, the text messages denying permission, the witness statement from Deputy Rodriguez, and the property deed clearly in my name alone. We never heard from Jason's lawyer again. 3 weeks later, I discovered another blessing from Grandpa George. While reorganizing his old desk, I found a leather-bound journal I'd never seen before. Inside, dated entries chronicled his thoughts about family, property, and legacy. An entry from 2 months before his death caught my eye. Decided to leave the cabin to Brooke alone. Some might call it favoritism, but it's about stewardship. She understands this place isn't just property, it's the sanctuary. A place that demands respect and offers wisdom in return. Others see it as an asset, but Brooke sees its soul. She'll face pressure to share ownership or usage, but I hope she stands firm. Some gifts aren't meant to be divided, their power lies in their wholeness. Tears streamed down my face as I read his words. Even from beyond, Grandpa George had anticipated the challenges I would face and offered his encouragement to stand firm. That entry became my touchstone in the difficult months that followed. I had the journal entry framed and hung it beside the fireplace, a reminder of both my grandfather's wisdom and my own hard-won boundaries. I also took practical steps to protect the property. Security cameras were installed at entry points. A proper rental agreement was drafted for any family members who might use the cabin in the future, with clear terms and time limits. The property boundaries were formally surveyed and marked. These measures weren't about paranoia, they were about establishing clear boundaries and expectations. About honoring the sanctuary that Grandpa George had entrusted to me. Slowly, the cabin reclaimed its peaceful atmosphere. The nursery room was converted back to a reading nook, then eventually into a small office where I could work remotely, extending my stays from weekends to weeks at a time. By the 3-month mark, the emotional rawness had begun to heal. The cabin no longer felt tainted by Jason's intrusion, but rather strengthened by the boundaries I had established to protect it. One evening, as I sat on the dock watching fireflies dance over the darkening water, I realized something important. In defending my inheritance, I had also inherited my grandfather's strength. His courage to stand firm on what matters most. His wisdom to recognize when kindness requires boundaries. That revelation felt like the final piece falling into place in my healing journey. The cabin was more than ever my sanctuary now, not because it was unchanged, but because I had fought for it, reclaimed it, and made it mine in a deeper way than before. 3 months after what my sister and I now called the invasion, life had found a new equilibrium. Jason's threats of legal action fizzled when his attorney realized how solid my ownership claim was. My relationship with Amanda had grown stronger through our shared experience of setting boundaries with Jason. As for Hazel, she had found her footing at the Women's Resource Center, securing a part-time remote job that accommodated her pregnancy and later, her newborn. When baby Noah arrived 6 weeks after the cabin confrontation, I visited them in the hospital, bringing a small stuffed fish that reminded me of the ones that swam in Crystal Lake. "Aunt Brooke is here," Hazel told the tiny bundle in her arms, surprising me with the honorary title. "Aunt?" I questioned softly. "You've been more family to us than Noah's actual father," Hazel explained. "Jason hasn't even called to ask if the baby was born." That moment crystallized something important. Family isn't always defined by blood or marriage. Sometimes it's formed through crisis, compassion, and the choices we make in difficult moments. The cabin itself had undergone both physical and emotional restoration. The bedroom that had briefly been intended as a nursery was now my dedicated office, allowing me to work remotely 3 weeks each month. My marketing firm had been so impressed with my handling of the Nature Life crisis that they promoted me to strategy director with more flexible working arrangements. Even my parents had visited, their first time at the cabin since Grandpa George passed. They had brought his favorite fishing pole, which Jason had damaged during his tantrum, now professionally restored. "Your grandfather would be proud," Dad said as we stood on the dock. "Not just of how you've maintained the place, but of how you defended it. Mom nodded in agreement. It takes courage to hold boundaries, especially with family. George knew you had that strength. The family dynamics had shifted permanently. Jason remained estranged, having moved to Chicago for a fresh start, according to mutual acquaintances. Amanda had filed for divorce and begun therapy to process the manipulation she'd endured throughout their marriage. My relationship with Hazel evolved into an unexpected friendship. Once a month, I drove to Carson City to spend time with her and Noah, often bringing supplies or helping with childcare so she could have a few hours to herself. "I've been thinking about what happened at the cabin," Hazel said during one such visit, while Noah napped peacefully. "It taught me something important about boundaries." "What's that?" I asked, curious about her perspective. "That they're not just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself," she explained. "When you refused to let Jason take over your space, you weren't just rejecting him. You were honoring yourself and your grandfather's legacy." Her insight struck me deeply. "I never thought of it that way." "I'm learning to set boundaries too," Hazel continued. "With Jason, with my parents who think I should make it work, with him for Noah's sake, with everyone who has opinions about my choices." We sat in comfortable silence, two women forever connected by a confrontation neither of us had wanted, but both had grown from. Back at the cabin, I established new traditions while honoring old ones. The annual family 4th of July gathering continued, but with clear guidelines sent in advance. The old fishing competition Grandpa George had organized became a catch-and-release event, teaching younger family members about conservation. I also created a formal cabin usage policy. Family members could request to use the cabin for short stays, with appropriate notice and agreement to specific rules. The policy was fair but firm, respecting both the property and my ownership of it. Most refused to stay at the cabin after what had happened with Jason, avoiding the awkward reminder. Though Amanda visited often, finding healing in the peaceful surroundings. One evening, as fall painted the surrounding forest in fiery hues, I found myself rereading Grandpa George's journal. An entry I hadn't noticed before caught my attention. Property isn't just land or buildings. It's a responsibility. A trust. When you own something, you become its steward, not just its possessor. The cabin isn't valuable because of its market price. It's valuable because of the wisdom it holds, the memories it keeps, the sanctuary it provides. That's why I'm so careful about its future. Not everyone understands that kind of stewardship. The passage resonated with everything I'd learned through this ordeal. The cabin wasn't just a vacation spot or a real estate asset. It was a legacy of values, respect for boundaries, appreciation for nature, and the courage to protect what matters. As I close this chapter of my story, I'm grateful for the difficult lessons it taught me. Learning to stand firm when faced with manipulation. Recognizing the difference between genuine need and entitlement. Understanding that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is maintain clear boundaries. I wonder about your experiences with family boundaries. Have you ever had to stand your ground against a loved one who didn't respect your property or decisions? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Your support helps this channel continue sharing stories that might help others facing similar situations. Remember, boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're guidelines that teach others how to respectfully remain in your life. Sometimes the strongest act of self-love is simply saying no when everything and everyone is pressuring you to say yes. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, this is Brooke Evans, sending strength to anyone fighting to protect their own sanctuary.